You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, we are finally looking at Donald Trump's first criminal trial beginning in earnest, and that would be in New York. So, he's going to be in court tomorrow for the hush money criminal case. What's happening in court that he's actually bothering to show up?
Yeah, so first of all, unlike civil trials, when you are being prosecuted, you are required to be present at every single hearing in your case, and you certainly have to be there every day during the course of your trial, unless you are excused by the judge. And I can tell you, Brian, after prosecuting for 30 years, rarely will a judge excuse a criminal defendant from his or her own trial. So what we expect to go on tomorrow, Donald Trump's lawyers have made a series of motions trying to convince the presiding judge, Judge Juan Merchan, to dismiss the charges. He's not going to do that. Everything the judge has said and done in the case indicates that this is on a trial track. And the open question right now, in my mind, is will Donald Trump's lawyers be able to come up with anything to convince Judge Merchan to kick the March 25th trial date, to push it down the road? I'm sure they would love to see it set for, I don't know, 2025 or 2026, anytime after the November 2024 presidential election. But there was a new article in the AP that I just read, and here is the most encouraging piece of the new reporting. And I don't know that I had seen this reported out before. Judge Merchan, in recent weeks, has been talking with the prosecutors in the case. That would be District Attorney Alvin Bragg's prosecutors at the Manhattan DA's office, and Donald Trump's criminal defense attorneys in the case about the jury selection process he intends to follow. Why is that important? Because judges don't begin talking about jury selection and how they will conduct jury selection unless the case is in the chute for trial and the judge intends to get the trial started on the date that he has previously set, which is March 25th. So all indicators are Judge Merchan is intending to start this trial just, what, 5 or 6 weeks from now. And there
Yeah.
would be a certain symmetry to this case being the first case to be tried against Donald Trump, because remember, it was the first time a former president of the United States had ever been criminally indicted. This was his first indictment, and if the trial kicks off on March 25th, it will obviously be his first criminal trial.
Now, in your opinion, do you think that there are any impediments to that March 25th trial date sticking?
No viable impediments that I can see. I'm sure Donald Trump's lawyers will be throwing as much spaghetti against the wall of that courtroom on Thursday as they can, hoping something will stick and convince Judge Merchan that for some reason they need more time or there's some impediment to them beginning the trial on March 25th. You know, my sense is the way Judge Merchan has presided over this case. And remember, he also presided over the criminal prosecution of the Trump Organization and Trump's chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg. He is no nonsense. He's all about business. He's about efficiency. And I don't think he's going to be up for playing Donald Trump's games and the games of his lawyers. So a case can always get continued, pushed down the road. But, you know, my sense right now is Judge Merchan is determined to get this thing to trial in late March.
Glenn, critics have written off this case as unimportant because it deals with a hush money payment. I know you have a strong feeling about that. Can I have your response to that?
Yeah, it's unimportant only if you don't care about a presidential candidate interfering with the rights of the American voters. Because, you know, we are forever hearing people refer to this case as a mere hush money payments case or a mere falsifying business records case. Make no mistake, it is both of those things. But at its core, it's an election interference case because back in 2015, Donald Trump had some deeply damaging information that the American voters were entitled to know to assess his suitability to be president. And what did he do? He entered into this criminal scheme with Michael Cohen and others to try to bury from the American voters this deeply damaging information. So he paid off porn stars and playmates, and then he falsified business records to make these things look like legal expenses. And so, you know, this is not a mere falsifying business records case as it might be if somebody just, you know, fudged some business records because they didn't want to pay as much in taxes as they should pay. This is an election interference case, and it is deadly serious.
Well, maybe he was just being prescient because at the end of the day, this is a pretty big a pretty big legal expense for Donald Trump. So, Glenn, what would the appeals process here look like?
So here's the good news, because we are now waiting for the Supreme Court to act in the DC federal prosecution, right? They are presently sitting on this ridiculous claim Donald Trump made that he has absolute immunity against being prosecuted for his crimes while in office. So we're just kind of treading justice water there because there was an appeal before that case was ever tried. Here's the good news. Generally speaking, in criminal cases, a defendant can't appeal anything before trial. The only time he can appeal is after he's been convicted, after he's been sentenced, then he can appeal all of the issues that he thinks the judge got wrong. But there is that one exception, and it's immunity or double jeopardy. It's anything that says, you know what, the trial shouldn't even begin. If, for example, somebody is actually immune from prosecution, okay, well, then they shouldn't have to go through a whole trial, conviction, and sentencing before they get an appellate court to weigh in on whether they ever should have been made to stand trial in the first place. But in New York, there is no issue like that in play. So this case should not be delayed for any legal reason. And the only time Donald Trump would have any right to appeal is after he's convicted and sentenced. And then he can appeal any and all issues he thinks Judge Merchan got wrong, and that will take some time to work its way through the process. So we will again be left with the issue, what happens to Donald Trump during that appeal? You know, most of the time, once a defendant has been convicted and sentenced, that defendant serves whatever time the judge has imposed while he or she appeals their case. Let's hope that Judge Merchan follows that ordinary course of business in the criminal justice system, rather than, upon conviction, leaving Donald Trump out for the years it might take for his case to make its way through the New York State appellate system.
Glenn, will this trial be televised?
It will not. There are no cameras in the courtroom televising the trials, which always puts Donald Trump at an advantage, because
Right.
remember, he just finished up a trial with Judge Engoron, who presided over his New York civil business fraud trial. What would we see? We didn't know what was going on in the courtroom, except as reporters were able to report it out in real time or as quickly as possible. But Donald Trump, on every break, would step into the hallway. The cameras would all train on him, and he would begin spouting out what I called his hallway lies, which were being broadcast in real time, fact check free. So, I have been harping since day one on the need to have cameras in the courtroom so we can combat the hallway lies, the lies that Donald Trump and his flunkies and his lapdogs and his sycophants are going to spew out about what's going on behind closed doors in a courtroom each and every day.
Okay, and let's finally finish off with this. What is the timeline in terms of what we can expect here? I know that we have about 5 or 6 weeks until this trial is set to begin. From March 25th, what are we looking at?
From March 25th, I would suspect jury selection will take some time, a number of days, perhaps a week or two. And then, if I had to gauge this kind of, it's kind of a white collar case, right? It's going to be documents heavy, lots of fraudulent documents that were generated by Trump and his criminal associates like Michael Cohen. But remember, there's also an audio recording of Donald Trump and Michael Cohen talking about setting up this corrupt scheme to make these hush money payments. So there's going to be some really important evidence introduced. I would suspect the trial itself could take something like 3 or 4 weeks. And then the wild card is, how long will the jury take to deliberate? They can take an hour, they can take a week. So it should be wrapped up, I would say, somewhere between maybe 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, well, we'll obviously stay on top of that throughout the entire duration of that trial. So for those watching right now, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.